Ladies and gentlemen, now I always find making a brand new free-to-play account is so valuable for me, and that's the reason why I've recently started another free-to-play series, because it allows me to go through the game again after, a year or two has passed and experience what progressing players are experiencing when they're playing the game, to see what I can learn to kind of update my guides and informational content and also advice, but also understand some of the struggles and problems that newer players might be having. Now, from my experience so far, I'm starting to see a really big problem, not only at the moment, but a problem that's going to continue to grow and get even worse for a lot of progressing and newer players in the next coming months. And I think this has been plaguing people for a few months now, but it's just getting worse and worse. And the essence of the problem is that in the endgame of Marvel Contest of Champions, there have been a lot of very tricky characters added. We've got champions like Iron Man, Infinity War, Thing, Korg, Annihilus, Nick Fury, Domino, Mr. Sinister, Havoc, Darkhawk, and even more, man. And we're going to talk about some champions that should be banned from Arena. But the problem is, these characters can even be available as 4-star champions, 3-star champions, in some cases 2-star champions as well. A really good example is that with the Avengers Endgame event, they have given every single player in the game a 2-star Iron Man Infinity War. So now he appears in Arena significantly more. Now, Iron Man Infinity War at his base has a huge reduction to general damage. He has a lot more armor, a lot more critical resistance as well. He's bleed immune, he's immune to all sorts of stuff, but also he has auto block, and when awakened at lower phases has power gain as well. You can see when fighting this dude in Arena, he is substantially overtuned, and the AI in Arena that makes him not throw the special attacks just makes him even worse to deal with. He is probably about 5 times more difficult than your average opponent. And I remember as a beginner, when I was learning to parry and evade, I was struggling with champions like Juggernaut and Unstoppable Colossus and Spider-Man when it came to Arena. And now newer players are going to have to deal with champions like Iron Man Infinity War, Thing, Korg, Annihilus, Nick Fury, and a big long list of confusing top tier defenders, because Kabam aren't actively taking this situation upon themselves to monitor and go, hey, these champions have some very complicated mechanics that are very tricky for new players to digest, and you've really got to put yourself into the mindset of a brand new player, right? You've just picked up the game, combos are maybe a little bit confusing, your concerns really are, how do I connect my special attacks, how do I learn to parry, how do I learn to evade? And then when you add all this like top tier defender stuff on, like auto block and crazy power gain, and crit resistance and reduction and not being able to parry projectiles, it all becomes very confusing and very overwhelming. Think about in a few months' time when Nick Fury is a little bit more common, when he's in the arena, when people think they're going to defeat him, and then the real Nick Fury comes in, man, and he's, completely unblockable, because he's thrown off a couple of special wands, and then he just rolls over. Like, as a brand new player, you're going to be sitting there like, what the hell just happened, dude? Is this game, like, super bugged? And as more and more of these champions flood the arena, especially in the earlier brackets and tiers, man, it's just going to make it really confusing and really frustrating. And I think people are much more likely to, just quit the game if they have an experience like the ones that I've been having all week against Iron Man Infinity Wars. I've also fought a couple of Things, and Thing sucks to fight when you don't have an aggressive AI, man. He's just such an annoying champion. He's going to be a massive pain in the ass for so many beginner players. This issue is a problem right now, but as more and more BS defenders come in, there needs to be a way for Kabam to block out and ban top tier defenders from early tier arenas, or you're going to have a lot of frustrated players that just abandon the game because they don't have a fair progression curve. Now that we've covered the issue of progressing and newer players just trying to learn the basics, man, trying to learn to, do their combos, throw off special attacks, parry, evade, there are just champions that have too much going on for them for beginner and progressing players. I think pretty much everybody under Uncollected, for the most part, is still grasping how to parry and evade consistently. So to have a lot of these crazy top tier defenders with so many intricate mechanics entering Arena in slightly slightly more difficult matchups is just way too much for beginner and progressing players here. So here's my list of recommended champions that need to be banned from Arena to kind of restore a little bit more balance and make it fair and give a better learning curve for progressing and newer players. So the first one is Iron Man Infinity War for multiple reasons that we've talked about. It's just way too overtuned, man. Thing as well is just absolutely ridiculous with the rock stacks baiting out the special attacks. All is unstoppable as well. Korg as well is just absolutely crazy to deal with for a brand new player. Annihilus, a very recent challenge and problem, but I also think one thing for players that are learning how to parry is just not adding in these matchups to the mix that kind of make them doubt their parrying ability, because like as a new player, man, you don't have time to read through like 140 character descriptions to know that you can't like parry like Iron Man Infinity War, Annihilus, Havoc, and a few other champions as well. So I think, you know, for the sake of like newer players, we should remove those champions that kind of have those like one-off inconsistency things, so at least they can get a little bit of practice and the fundamentals down before you take that away from them, if that makes sense, just to add kind of a good progression curve to it. And I also do believe there needs to be something to kind of bridge the gap, some more kind of learning in tutorial things with some of the more difficult champions, because if you are not like playing the game at the appropriate month where certain champions are released, you probably are very unaware of how to deal with that champion and their mechanics, especially when there's you know, not a lot of new challenge stuff being added constantly. So yeah, it's just one of those things, man, that the difficulty is getting a little bit rough in this game to a certain extent. But also Nick Fury, man, definitely going to be a very infuriating experience for a lot of people that go to fight Nick Fury, like push him over to death and think, okay, you know, this combo can kill him, man, he's got a special 3 active, but then he comes back with that massive fury and then just one-shots them with a special 3, or, you know, throws off a couple of special 1s and goes unblockable very, very quickly. That's just going to be absolute hell for newer players in Arena. Domino, with all her fun and interactive damage and evade and all the rubbish stuff that can happen, and the fact that you can't parry her consistently unless you know how to, you know, parry from a distance or do those little dash back intercepts there. You know, Domino's got a fair bit of mastery in terms of fighting her, and also the ability to like disable evades as well. That's just not something that you want to like put on players that are just learning how to play the game. Also Mr. Sinister as well, with that you know, absolutely insane regeneration and ability to transfer debuffs even though you evade. That's going to leave some people quite confused there. You've also got Havoc as well, so you can't parry his medium attacks. That's going to leave people a little bit questioned there. And then you've got the issue of fun and interactive damage on top of that one, and some very, very tricky special attacks to avoid as well. So yeah, I just think he's a little bit, you know, too above the mark for newer players. Darkhawk with his auto block and invisibility is just going to be a little bit confusing, a little bit frustrating for people that are just trying to get a solid handle on the game. Killmonger. Killmonger is one of those that's a little bit more borderline, but I think with his reverberation and also his damage back and power gain, he is like arguably a little bit too much for a lot of progressing players to deal with. He is a bit too much of a pain in the ass. Mr. Potato Head, aka MODOK, is definitely just a bit too much for a lot of people that are just trying to get a good handle on this game to deal with, especially in Arena where you have like stun duration as well, so it makes him a little bit more tricky to fight. I just think, you know, you need to be a little bit into the game before you get comfortable fighting MODOK there. And then we have Emma Frost with all the immunities, like the stun immunity, and like immunity to pretty much everything in diamond form, and also the inverted controls. I just think she's like a little bit too much for that beginner like progressing player bracket, so I definitely put her on the ban list as well. Hyperion, for many reasons, man. He's like I mean, Hyperion has probably been like the OG like BS Arena champion along with Mordo as well, especially when you're building up the streak because of the insane power gain of both champions. They're so easy to get to a special 3 and just smash you. And Mordo's a little bit less of an issue than Hyperion is, just because Hyperion hits much, much harder on the special 3, but Mordo's also a champion that does punish you for like parrying and attacking into Mordo while stunned, which again for newer players can be a little bit confusing. So I think he should, you know, Mordo at least should be kept out of the bottom 2 arenas, the The 2-star and 3-star one, in my opinion. And then finally, I think Medusa, just with her auto block and the amount of time you've got to like wait out to actually get in on Medusa, she can just be a little bit much for certain people to deal with, man. Medusa is a very, very annoying defender in Alliance War. She gets a lot of kills, and for good reason. So I think having her, especially in a PvP arena where she's got the parry mastery as well, is just a little bit much. And there's, you know, maybe a few champions as well that I have missed off this list, but you've got to bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what I always try to do when I'm starting a new free-to-play account, is kind of put myself in the mindset of, if I didn't have the knowledge and experience, how would I be finding these fights when I'm dealing with them in arena for somebody that's trying to like grasp onto the basics of MCOC? And like, some of these champions are just way overtuned, they're way too you know, overpowered, and you should only see them after like a certain level, like Act 5, Act 6 level, once it is kind of assumed that people have a fair grasp on the basics of Marvel Contest of Champions. Because on my free-to-play account so far, it's been a week and a little bit, and I've absolutely surged up in terms of the story quest progression. And I've done Act 4 completion. You can see I've got Maestro down here, but I would say you know, up till all this content, Act 1 till 4, there's nothing that's been more difficult or annoying or frustrating than dealing with Iron Man Infinity War and Thing in arena. And I haven't even fought some of these newer champions like Korg and Nihilus, Nick Fury, but you can bet your bottom dollar once these champions become substantially more available in terms of the 3-star and 4-star champion crystals, we're going to be seeing them a lot more when it comes to arena. And that, you know, for a lot of the veteran players, it's going to be something that they're fairly used to. You fought those champions a fair bit, but you've also always got to think about this game from the perspective of people that haven't been along for the ride, people that are just trying to get into the game, and think about just how frustrating it is when you're dealing with like all these BS crazy mechanics that you don't understand and you can't really understand, and you don't want to have to get up like a 10-minute how to fight tutorial video every time you find like a super tricky champion. So yeah, it's a little bit crazy, man. It's a little bit crazy. There definitely needs to be a bit of a pushback to the later game for some of these champions, and additional challenges and pieces of content added into the game that are static, where players, once they get to a certain point where they're past content like Act 4, maybe they've just got uncollected, or they're just before uncollected, like around that uncollected mark, where they can practice a little bit more against some of these more problematic champions. So there needs to be some static challenges so people have the opportunity to learn, they have the opportunity to train, they have the opportunity to play the game and get better, instead of being, you know, absolutely ambushed and hoodwinked in the very, very early days where they're just trying to grasp onto the basics. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below about beginners and progressing players having to deal with top tier defenders. I'll be interested to get a bit more of a perspective on this and what you guys feel is kind of the right solution to it as well. I think at the moment in time, like an outright ban is probably the best thing that Kabam could do, but in the future, I believe like a full revamp of the arena system is needed. This game definitely is starting to suffer from the fact that it does not have a good progression and learning curve to get people from that kind of like, you know, newer intermediate level to the level of experience and knowledge of some of the veteran players. And I think that's really something that Kabam need to identify and address sooner rather than later, because, you know, every single month recently we've had like new top tier BS defender come out, and they just keep on stacking up and up and up. And if it doesn't get addressed soon, I think it's going to have some very negative consequences for some players that are trying to get into the game. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Smash that like button if you did enjoy today's video. Take care, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day.